These days, it feels like that barely a week goes by without a game releasing or being announced that doesn't feel like a piece of propaganda, like the developers aren't trying to push a blatant agenda down people's throats, trying to change their world by pushing their politics onto everyone. And because this is happening so often now, plenty of people are asking the question, is Ghost of Yotei, the upcoming game announced by Sony recently, is it going to be the next one of these? The next game where the development team obviously hates regular people, they're trying to push some sort of message, there's another agenda at play, they're not just trying to make a fun, engaging game, there's something else at hand. Does pushing personal politics come first for this studio, or are they focused on making the best game possible? Now, I think it's an interesting conversation, because unlike, say, a Concord, where pretty much everyone can see the writing on the wall from the start, the game looks pathetic, only the most extreme of the most extreme were actually defending that one. Pretty much everyone could see it was hopeless, a lost cause, except for Sony, apparently. They released it and were saying it was going to be the future of PlayStation. But that one, Concord, there's basically no nuance. With Ghost of Yotei, it is a bit more interesting, because on one hand, you have the people calling it out, and they're very concerned about the Ghost of Yotei. And the reason why, there's probably two main reasons. Firstly is, it feels like there was a gender swap here. The first game, Ghost of Tsushima, you played as a male character, and now for this sequel, they've done the swap and there's a female protagonist. And this concerns people because of the pattern, the amount of existing franchises which were built off the back of having a white protagonist, and then along the way for a reboot or a sequel like this, they do that swap. Now it's a female lead, or it's a person of color lead replacing a white person, for instance. This has happened a lot, and there's usually a shift as well in tone of the entire IP. It's not just that it now stars a woman, it's also the fact that almost every time this happens, it feels like the tone of that original IP has a dramatic shift. Like, all of the cool things about it originally, they have to go because they're toxic, too much masculinity, all of that. And then it just loses its appeal completely. So that's part of what's got people worried. They're concerned that we might lose what made Ghost of Tsushima interesting in the first place. That's kind of the first reason, just that switch from male to female protagonist. Not really because it's a female lead, but more that history of when there's this swap, it often leads to just a lot of things getting worse, the entire franchise kind of just going downhill, not feeling organic. But there's a bigger reason, because I don't think that many people see female protagonist as a red flag. Obviously, that can feel a bit extreme when you just say it. But the second big reason is the person actually playing the Ghost of Yotei, Erika Ishii, I think it is, non-binary, first of all. And also, according to this tweet and some other things I've seen, apparently in Ghost of Yotei, a progressive activist known for hating the police, telling straight women who disagree with LGBT to log off, is not just the voice actor, but is also doing the motion capture, is the face of the game, essentially. They are the main character in every possible way. Obviously, that has some people concerned, because it's these sorts of people who are often also the developers of the game, who basically just hate the majority of the gaming public, who are just looking for something fun to play. A lot of these people, they're determined to push their politics onto everyone. If you don't agree with their politics, they see you as the enemy, and understandably, this has people concerned, because this sort of mindset has ruined a ton of games. A million examples that I can keep mentioning. Now, there's certainly more than that to be concerned about, and I'll go into a few other things, but I just wanted to mention the other side of the argument, because again, it's a bit different than the Concords and so on. There's been a lot more pushback to the pushback. There's a lot of people who are now saying, people who are upset about Ghost of Yotei, the anti-woke people, they're just as bad as the woke people. They're a complete other side of the extreme. There's the people crying wolf, the boy who cried wolf argument that's getting thrown around. Any game gets announced, if it's got a person of color hovering in the background, if there's a woman anywhere to be seen, then it's woke, then it's bad. There's people making that argument, trying to sort of downplay concerns of a game pushing this political stuff, and just sort of saying one side's just as bad as the other. I do think that's disingenuous. I do think often what happens as well is you get these people who come out of the woodwork and they sort of go, oh, I'm completely neutral. I just want games to be games. I don't want to hear about woke or not woke, because that stuff's not really real. And then you look at what their views are. You maybe track down their Twitter profile, and they're actually obsessed with like left-wing politics. They talk about it all day, but they pretend to be somewhere in the middle when they're arguing with people. And sure, there's plenty of people who don't sort of care that much one way or the other, who are sick of all of that discourse. But the reason I think this is disingenuous is both sides are not equal. You've got one side who are trying to push their political ideology into games. The developers are in on it as well, so pretty much all the developers agree with the side that want all games to be political like this, and again, they hate most of the audience, regular everyday people who just want entertainment. They don't want to be lectured to, re-educated, all of that. So people on the side pushing for it, and that includes the developers themselves. Then you have the other side who basically just don't want that. They just kind of want games to be like they were 15, 20 years ago for the most part, where they were there just to sell to us, the company makes money, we buy it to have fun. We just sort of want to go back to that. If both sides of the extreme were the same, then the side pushing back against this, they'd also be, if we assume most of them are more conservative leaning and so on, which I don't think is really true. I think it's just sort of everyday people, even those who don't really care that much about politics, they just want fun. But if we say more conservative leaning people, then they'd be pushing instead, not just to get rid of this stuff, but they'd be saying, no, every game should be about anti-abortion, should be pushing that message. It should even go as far to outright say that homosexuality should be banned and illegal, and telling people it's wrong. I don't think anyone's really pushing for that, except an extreme that we never hear about. There are a tiny minority that they don't even really get in the conversation. Most people, it's literally, we just want this stuff to stop, the extreme on one side of the aisle to stop, and at least get back to a sense of normalcy where the priority for making a game is around fun, not around pushing politics. So again, these people talking about Cry Wolf, their argument is basically people are upset because there's a woman in it, and they're getting upset because the star of the game has left-wing political beliefs. And if you're getting upset at this, then you're as bad as all the crazies who try and cancel anyone who's ever liked a Donald Trump tweet, for instance. Now, what I'd say to start with is just stepping back a second. I agree that like trying to boycott someone or boycott a whole company because someone works there who has beliefs that you don't agree with politically, that can be another side of the extreme, because I think it's a good thing if every company, every studio, whatever, every group has people of differing beliefs. I think that's important. I think that's real diversity, not when it's based on skin color or all of that. When it's based on diversity of thought, people with different beliefs, different ideas, I think that's when games can thrive. I'm not looking for every game studio to have my political beliefs behind it and be pushing those. It's just about them not resembling a cult like they kind of are now, where you only get hired if you agree with the politics that's going around in the industry. There's a lot of hypocrisy here, because let's say this person here, and they've got in their Twitter here in the top right, BLM, blah, 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 obviously agrees with the actress who's playing the Ghost of Yotei. And they say, just so we all understand, Erica didn't commit a crime, did nothing illegal, and yet everyone's hating on her. This is a huge double standard, because ask yourself this. If this person was a Donald Trump fan, for instance, or if they shared political opinions that were a little bit to the right, even the center, if they weren't going completely insane on Twitter about hating the police, if they had different views, do you really think that this person would have been hired? I don't think so, and that's part of the problem, the hypocrisy, is that it's totally fine, it's accepted, it's encouraged for you to have these extreme political beliefs, but if you have any other political beliefs at all, then you're not going to get hired in this space, in this industry. We see it because where are the other people who have different beliefs? They're either hiding them or they're not allowed. And so you get these people like the BLM activist here saying, oh, they didn't commit a crime, didn't do anything illegal, why are people angry? You've been doing this for years about anyone that you don't agree with. And there's articles like this, hate against Ghost of Yotei because of Erica, her decisions in her personal life, it's just unwarranted, it's distasteful. If they said anything remotely right-leaning, you'd be going insane about it. You'd be calling Sony, they're totally going down the deep end, they're supporting Nazis. They'd be going insane if it was someone who had beliefs that they labeled problematic. But when it's someone from their side of things who shares their ideology, then their argument is to basically say, oh, criticizing people for their political beliefs, that's distasteful and not allowed. You've been doing it forever. And it's same with like fans of the game, for instance. If we look at Reset Era, of course, they're overjoyed that a non-binary person who hates the police and everything has been hired. There's this incredible meme, like the left comes up with these great memes, and the first character in this meme says, I want to buy Ghost of Yotei. The second guy says, the lead actress supports trans rights and thinks cops are white supremacists. And then the original guy says, I'm already buying the game, Harry, you don't need to sell it to me. So it's all fairies and sprinkles when it's someone hired who agrees with them and their ideology, but again, they'd be totally melting down if it went in the other direction. Even if it was just simply that, like, it started new white protagonists, these people would be saying, what an incredibly missed opportunity. Probably white supremacists over there at Sony and Sucker Punch who are making it. They wouldn't be happy. So it's total hypocrisy. And again, coming back to the idea that people who are calling Ghost of Yotei woke already because of Erica's views, her political views, because the game now stars a woman, and saying that people calling that out, being concerned, they're as bad as the woke crowd, the anti-woke, they're just as bad. You just have to understand that this comes from years and years of this being pushed on us and people seeing the red flags. I think most reasonable people, this is how I'd probably look at it as well, where the studio behind Ghost of Yotei, they've pretty much only made decent games. They haven't gone down the deep end like a lot of Sony studios, Naughty Dog, where The Last of Us Part 2, I think was just weird. I think that was really the start of where I thought, hang on, The Last of Us Part 1 was an interesting game. It feels like you've tanked it for ideological reasons. I was not interested at all in The Last of Us Part 2. Spider-Man 2, which I think falls into that same camp. There's plenty of videos out there explaining why. Concord, which you may have heard didn't do so well. But there's just a lot of examples of Sony-owned studios just massively going downhill. Sometimes it's purely quality reasons. Maybe they lose talent or the studios, they're just not being managed well. But also just pushing this ideology onto everyone and then the game's getting progressively worse and worse. This is happening a lot. It hasn't happened yet to Sucker Punch, but I think there's too many examples for people to maybe not be concerned if they're seeing a few red flags like this. I think it's simply the red flags. People are very open to this being a great game, picking up and continuing where the first one left off, being quality, but people have had enough of giving the benefit of the doubt to these studios that just seem intent on self-destructing. They self-destruct in the name of pushing politics over entertainment. Their priorities are very clear. And again, it just comes back to those red flags. Like, people have been kind of conditioned to be worried and think like this the second they see a female protagonist in a series where it was usually a guy. Like, that didn't just happen by accident because everyone's sexist, everyone's racist. It happened because of things like, for instance, go back to the Xbox show a few months ago where it just felt like every game, basically, it was either it stars a woman lead or it's got a person of color lead or something, and basically no one in the games shown were attractive. There certainly weren't any white men allowed either. And when it's just happening so much, like almost every game you see fits that category, you lose the benefit of the doubt of, oh, they're just trying to be progressive and represent minorities, to there's clearly an agenda, something nefarious going on here. Like, this doesn't feel quite right. And then also, when someone does try and make something that feels more traditional, like what we got 20 years ago with, say, a Stellar Blade, all these people who are now going, oh, the anti-woke are so bad, they lose their mind at something like Stellar Blade. So it's all kind of weird. Again, if Sucker Punch released Ghost of Yotei, it's clearly fun, everything about it's great, and it just happens to star a woman, no one's gonna care. Pretty much everyone, 99% of the gaming audience who would be interested in a game like this, they'll purchase it. Very few people are going to be like, there's a woman in it, I'm definitely not going near it. That's an extreme minority. And most of them are not the people who are questioning some of the red flags here. The reason people are skeptical is not because so many gamers are intolerant. It's because the gaming industry has hated a lot of us for so long, for not thinking just like them, for thinking like a lot of these blue-haired, pink-haired developers. They've been paying the price for it all this year, the Concords, the Star Wars Outlaws, Suicide Squad, everything else, and they will pay the price again if Ghost of Yotei is another one like that. It may not be, it may be great, and if it is, I really do think that most people will get on board with it. But gamers for now, they're going to be skeptical. Many are, and I can't blame them. The industry has brought that on themselves. So that's on them. They're going to have to prove otherwise. Sony are going to have to prove otherwise as well, because it feels like they've been making nothing but shit decisions for a while, Astrobot aside. But I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye.